A reading describing the life of the early church from Acts 2, verse 42. And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. And awe came upon every soul. And many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all, as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favour with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved. This passage here unfolds just a few days, or shortly at least, after the great day of Pentecost. The sermon, you'll remember, that Peter preached that pierced the hearts of so many, and 3,000 were added to the number of the church on that day. And now we hear in the scriptures what happens next. It doesn't simply tell us, you see, how the early church believed things. It tells us how they acted. The doing as well as the believing is important because, of course, after all, you really demonstrate your beliefs by the things that you do. And the description that we have of this happy band, these 3,000 and so who were converted, this small church, the beginning of the church that spread across the globe to this day, begins with the phrase, they devoted themselves. Not they were occasionally interested in, not they were casually involved in, not anything less than devotion. They devoted themselves. And wherever the grace of God truly takes hold of a people, it produces this self-same spirit of devotion. And so let's see what the devotion looked like in the early church. First of all, we read they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. The first mark of a healthy church is a deep love for the truth of God, which is found in the teaching of the apostles. We have the Old Testament describing everything of God. We have the New Testament applying that to the early church in the light of Christ. These apostles were the witnesses chosen by Christ. These apostles were the ones trained up by Christ. These apostles were the ones to whom Christ had explained his ministry. Doctrine here, you see, was no dull matter for scholars. Doctrine here was life itself. And the church that abandons sound teaching also soon loses its spiritual strength. But where believers hunger for the teaching of the apostles, as here, the church grows strong. A congregation may lack wealth, buildings, or prestige, but if it holds firmly to the truth of Christ, it possesses all that really matters. And then next we read that they were devoted to the fellowship. The Christian faith was never meant to be lived alone. Those believers did not scatter into private spirituality. They were together. They shared their lives. They shared their homes. They even shared their possessions. All who believed, we read, were together and had all things in common. And when the love of Christ fills the heart, it breaks down the walls that separate people. Pride yields to humility and selfishness yields to generosity. True fellowship is not merely a social friendliness. It is the shared life of Christ among his people. And then we read they devoted themselves to worship. They devoted themselves, we read, to the breaking of bread and to the prayers. Their devotion led them constantly back to the worship of God. They gathered to remember the sacrifice of Christ, whose death had purchased their salvation. They prayed together because they knew their dependence together upon God. And notice the spirit in which they did it. They ate together with, we read, glad and generous hearts. True Christianity doesn't produce gloomy religion. It produces joyful worship. Where Christ is loved, praise flows naturally. And the result? Well, we can see here that when a church lives in this way, something remarkable happens. First, awe comes upon every soul as God's presence becomes evident. And then the believers enjoy favour with those who are around them. Even amongst those who don't believe, can see something is happening. They can see the beauty of a community shaped by Christ, the most wonderful result of which is given in the next sentence. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who are being saved. Notice carefully who adds to the church. Not clever strategies, not human efforts. The Lord added to their number. He delights to add where his people are devoted to truth, to fellowship, and to prayer. But everything in this passage begins with that simple phrase, they devoted themselves. The early church was not perfect, but it was perfectly committed to Christ. And where such devotion appears today, the same blessings flow. The word is treasured, fellowship is warm, worship is joyful, and the Lord continues his saving work. And may God grant that it may be said of us as well, they devoted themselves to Christ, and the Lord added to their number. Amen.